Chuck Daly, Scotty Bowman, Jim Leland. You've covered some high-profile personalities. Do you have a favorite story maybe you can share with us about something that happened while you were covering one of these great interviews?
I'll share this with you. There were some. You're right. Scotty Bowman was just a total enigma. There were days that Scotty Bowman was totally cool with me. I had my microphone, my tape recorder, and he didn't care. And then there were other days where he would grab me after a scrum and say, "What are you doing with that audio? Give me the tape." And he asked for the tape a couple times. And I said, "For what?" And he's like, "You're going to take that and chop it up and make me say something that I didn't say. Don't do that." And I said, "I'm not going to do that. Well, I promise." Like, I think he thought he was so paranoid sometimes, but what a legend, what a genius to be around. And, those Wings teams those guys were all really, really cool. So that was an easy team to cover. When I did the Pistons for 10, 11 years, and off the top of my head, I could tell you, I had 2 years with Rick Carlisle, 2 years with Larry Brown, 3 years with Flip Saunders. So that's 7. 1 year of Michael Curry, that's 8. 2 years of John Kuster is 10, and 2 years of Lawrence Frank. So that's 12. So it was 12 years. So I could tell you the coaches that easily, because the Pistons, while they were on a great run back then, 6 straight conference finals, they went through coaches like underwear, unfortunately. Right. But Larry Brown, I was a Rick Carlisle guy. We all were. Rick developed such a relationship with us at DFN, me especially, because I was there every game. So when Rick got fired, we were devastated, and we were blindsided by it. And, a lot of us there were some that accused DFN of shilling for Rick and being Rick homers. Well, they brought in Larry Brown, who obviously won a championship. I was not a Larry Brown fan. I think he tells a lot of fibs, including recently he was on a podcast with Mike Stone recently and just telling crazy stories that most of them are not true. But he won a championship. But the second year, there was a Pistons loss to the Pacers in a playoff series in 2005 while they were on their way to another championship run. They didn't win it, obviously, and there was a post-game show, and someone called in and asked why Carlos Arroyo didn't play. And I was an Arroyo guy. I loved him as a backup point guard. He and I got along. And I said, "Carlos Arroyo not playing tonight is a disgrace. How do you not have Carlos Arroyo out there? And Anthony Johnson was killing them, blah, blah, blah." Next day, a phone call from Kevin Grigg, who's still Pistons PR, and KG's a friend of mine. And he said, "You got to come to practice this morning." And I went, "Why?" And he's like, "Larry wants to see you." And I was like, "Oh, geez." So I go to practice, and you're at the practice facility up there in Auburn Hills, and they're shooting free throws. They let us in, and Larry's about to do his media scrum, and he doesn't even do media. He points to his office, and I follow him along with Kevin, and he just dresses me down in his office. He goes off on me. "You called me a disgrace. That's a personal attack. Who do you think you are? This isn't what you want to be, like Howard Stern. Did you want to be a shock jock?" And he was going, my kids and my wife were in the car. My wife has to hear you call me a disgrace. And I was like, "I did not call you a disgrace. I said it was a disgrace." And it was. There's a difference. And we were arguing semantics, and thank goodness Kevin was there, because Kevin's so even-keeled. And he's like, "Hold on a second. Coach, maybe Matt wouldn't take a personal shot like that. He's been with us for years. But Matt, maybe you shouldn't have used that term." So, we ironed it out. But to be dressed down by a Hall of Famer in his office was pretty crazy.
Chapter 1 in your book.
I had to tell him,
Chapter 1 in your book,
some of your
Matt.
assistant coaches are friends of mine, like Pat Sullivan and Dave Hanners. Like, ask Pat and Dave. I'm not trying to be some shock jock. I tell like it is after these games. I work for the team. I know they pay me. I know the rules. And so that was kind of a cool story.
Well, to compound on that story, because that's a fine line you walk. You mentioned you're paid by the team, but if you're not real, the fans see through that. How do you walk that line?
Well, let me say this. In working for Bill Davidson, Tom Wilson, Pete Skorich, and the folks at the Palace, they were insanely cool to me. All right. Nowadays, things are different. You work for the team. Listen to some of the local broadcasts here. All right. Listen to the Tigers television broadcast. All right. It's a shill session. It just is. Tigers down 10-0. Let's go to the studio. Oh, they had some good at-bats, Mick. No, they didn't. They lost 10-0. Shut up. Like, you can't fool Detroit fans. This is the best sports city in the country. I'm not even from here. I'm wearing, as you see, my Cleveland Guardians shirt. Detroit sports is amazing. You can't fool these people. How could I get on the air after a Pistons game where they lost? I was on the air after Rasheed Wallace left Robert Horry alone. What was I going to say after the game? Well, Rasheed tried. Well, they almost, no, I had to get on there and say, Rasheed Wallace blew the assignment. How do you double Ginobili in the corner and leave Robert Horry open? It's a gigantic mistake. And everybody called in, and some callers were shredding Rasheed. But he knew he screwed up. But no one, Pete, Mr. Davidson, Tom, nobody ever said, Matt, don't do this, don't do that. I think I got yelled at one time in 12 years for a comment. I think I referred to Pat Riley once as Pat the Rat Riley. And they're like, don't do that. You're on an NBA broadcast. So I apologize. I didn't apologize to Pat Riley, but you know what I mean? But for the most part, they let me be me because I had to keep it real. I had relationships with the coaches and players. Joe Dumars and I had a relationship. So I showed up, and I just, as long as I wasn't, Ron, taking personal shots, I wasn't calling a player small or ugly or said something about his family. I kept it basketball, and the guys respected that. And so that's kind of how I did it.